boy asked Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, has a son no right over his father? He replied by saying, to select for him a good mother, this is one right. To give him a good name is a right. To teach him the Quran is a right. So these are responsible. Now some parents think that they have a right over them until they die. That is wrong. That is wrong. Parents' responsibility is that you give them a good character, you give them a good nature, now you bring them up. Okay, you try and help them find the right spouse, you try and give them good advice. But you know, some parents, they just can't let go. Their kid gets married, they still treat him as a little kid. He's got children, they still treat him as a little kid. No independence. Then you probably, you basically a grandfather or a grandmother by now, but you still got no respect to give him some independency. One good advice I'd give to you is, if you can do this, that after marriage you get your separate accommodation. It will really bring a lot of peace to you in your life. A lot of peace. If you're a sister, listen to this. If you got a choice between a few brothers that are coming and seeing you, and you've got one brother that can give you a separate accommodation, and he's got a good character and all the other things that I've said, and the others haven't got a separate accommodation, I would ask you to go for the brother that will give you separate accommodation. When you're separate, you're independent. Our parents came to this country, they did not come with all the grandparents, their grandmothers. They didn't do that. So they had a nice, they had a tough life, but they still had a nice life of independence. And I would say to you that the best life, what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam do for his own daughter Fatima radiallahu anha? She even asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to bring herself near him and to give him some other accommodation. He said no. And Sayyidina Ali couldn't afford a house, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam got a separate accommodation for Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidatuna Fatima radiallahu anhuma, and he made sure that they stayed separate from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's own house. While Fatima and Ali radiallahu anhuma, up until that time, more or less they were in the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he separated them. Why? On the basis of what? On the basis that he understood that when you're separate and you're independent, you can make your own decisions. You've got qualms, you can sort it out yourself. You've got happiness, you can have your private time of happiness. When you're living with in-laws, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, please, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Sometimes you live with in-laws, it's a credit as well because you've got people to look after them. There's bonuses on both sides, but there's discredits on both sides. You've got to look at the pros and cons. But I believe that in this country where I've seen people live with in-laws, there's more issues than people who live separately. I've dealt with a lot of cases, my brothers and sisters, and I'm telling you from experience. And I would say to you that if you got that chance, please take up that chance. And parents, because some parents, they think, Ya Allah, astaghfirullah, you're kind of betraying them if you leave the house. What's the parent's right? The parent's right is that one of the sons or one of the daughters will look after them in old age. At least, if not all of them. Now if one of the brothers, one of the sisters of yours has decided that they're going to look after your parents, then the responsibility is a fard kifaya. It's a fard kifaya. That means if one of them does it, the rest of them don't have to do it. But for a parent to be adamant that they want all their children to live with them in the same household, they're creating a cocktail of trouble. Seriously. Because what happens is, it's not back home. Back home is like you got a lot of space. You got, the rooms are big. This size hall is a room back home. I'm serious. And you got big kitchen, you got big outside, and women can just go outside, go next. They can walk freely up and down here and there because they're all family, right? Here in England, you got a strict four-wall that is really congested already. And you know what happens? They all come down to the same kitchen. Back home, you got 4 kitchens. Come, let's be honest with you. My dad built a big house back home. There's separate kitchens. Or if they want to make separate, they've got the space. Land, you build. There's no application you need to make. There's no planning permission. You build where you want, my brother. You build as high as you want. Yeah? But here you can't do that. They're all anyway saying kitchen. Now the 3 daughter-in-laws. And then there's their godmother, the mother-in-law, with a wand. And she basically with a stick and she's waiting. Who's going to clean those dishes today? Who scratched the cooker? Astaghfirullah. I want to get that daughter-in-law. And there's issues, they're all congested, they're like chickens in battery hens, like battery hens or something in a farm. They can't move. They fart, somebody knows when they fight, which direction they fight, how stinking he was. I'm serious. And they start talking, and who did what in the house, who didn't do what in the house, and they make trouble. And then the husbands that come home, they have to listen. Now, then this brother is not talking to that brother. I know brother, honestly I'm speaking, I'm saying this to you in this seminar here. I know brothers that haven't talked to each other in the same house for years. Or they talk only salam and that's it. Because of the women in the house. Not just the women, it's the brothers as well, because they come home, they just listen to their wife. And the wife says, like, this happened, did you hear? And the guy, oh, please, what can I do for you? And then after that, what happens is he gets all, that's you. Right, I'm going to go out there. Right? First thing is, please, go and investigate what your wife is saying. Just because she's your wife doesn't mean she is a firishta, she's an angel. Your wife could be biased. Your wife could tell you something, misconstrued. Your wife could have her own, little bit of, she might have put a little masala with it when she's telling you. And you've added your vindaloo to it when you're going to talk to them. You're going to make it really hot and spicy when you go and talk to them. But please investigate first. What was the real situation? Did so-and-so say this? Did so-and-so say that? No, yes, find out. And sometimes it's between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, and the guy gets caught in the middle. The mother says, your wife said this, and the wife says, your mother said this. And he looks at his mother, he goes to his mother, he's not upsetting his wife. He goes to his wife, he's upsetting his mother. And these are happening in hundreds and thousands of houses. Yes or no? Come on. Yes, they're happening. So I'm telling you, in this country of ours where we are living, it is nice to have a separate accommodation to sort out this problem, because these problems don't end. They don't end. They just get worse, and they get worse until one of them moves out. And by the time they've moved out, the bitterness in their heart is something unresolvable. I've dealt with cases where they've been there for 12 years together and whatever. I don't want to go on with this, but I would say to you that please try and get this. If you're going to live together, the best thing is, if you're good Muslims, you won't have trouble. If you have good etiquettes, if you have good adab, if you really are going to follow the Quran and Sunnah and listen to Allah and His Messenger, there won't be trouble. But people don't do that. And most people are not going to do that. And I know men in the masjid, la ilaha illallah, was so good in the masjid. You're going to say, I could call him dad. I could make him, like a kind of stepdad if I wanted to, a person I could look up to, right? But that same guy goes home and, with the things he does, if you were to listen to the women in his household, you'd be shocked. You'd puke up. You'd go and beat him up. There's some people like that. Again, don't judge people with what you see.